Welcome back to Easing the Reader, a Wheel of Time reread. I am Chris Mary Hultman. With me, I have David Green with not his book, but The Dragon Reborn. Yes,
it's working quite well this week.
Yeah, you must have been rubbing it.
I was putting heat on it. I was rubbing it across the side of the face like this. No, it's I don't know what it is, but hello again, Christopher, and anyone who's watching, even if it's before or even if it's for the first time, please like and subscribe to the channel.
Because what can happen? Now I'm like pointing at you, but I'm not. It's pointing in the different direction. What can happen?
We're doing the competition. We have actually hit 100 subscribers now, but we're going to leave it on until the end. We were doing it to the end of the Dragon Reborn season. So when we start the first episode of the Shadow Rising talk, we will do a draw for all our subscribers to win a copy of my book. Oh, there we go. I wasn't rubbing this one enough. In Solitude Shadow by moi. So you get a signed copy of this. We're going to do a draw. One subscriber will get it. If you like Wheel of Time, there's stuff in here that you'll enjoy. And in fact, if you like Brandon Sanderson as well, one website, a fancy website, I can't remember the name of it now, sorry, that reviewed it, said it was the best fantasy novella they'd read since Brandon Sanderson's The Emperor's Soul, which I thought was quite high praise. So nice. if you do like it, that kind of stuff, you will be subscribe to us and you will get a chance of winning a signed copy. One signed copy. And we'll do 200.
I was just thinking, what if somebody were to review my fantasy book in the sense it's if you like David Eddings, you will enjoy this book.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to review it when it's done. I'm going to be like, fans of David Eddings, queue up, because there is lots of witty banter, repetitive storylines, and every single character,
nakedness and sign language.
Every single he loves sign language in there. Everyone's got a secret language with the hands that they can do. And the thing is as well, like there's this secret hand language that he does, right? It's not like, it's so kind of like subtle enough that people won't notice it sometimes, but it's really complex as well, because they have full on, it's not just like, red cloak, sword. So people, it's really complex, and people have full conversations in it. He also loves people having about 20 different names as well.
Yeah.
It's like, so your name is this, but in this town, in this nation, you're known as this, and in this place, you're known as this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Everyone has like about 20 different names. I love it.
It's probably why they haven't tried to adapt anything by him, because you think that, they've done Terry Brooks now with Shannara, and they've done the Gwyn. They tried to do Dragonlance in a like an animated show, or at least an animated movie, and they're doing Wheel of Time now. So Eddings would probably be the next one, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think
of the classics. If you talk about like the classic fantasy kind of Mount Rushmore of fantasy authors.
Well, the thing is as well, though, you'd have to Lee Eddings would have to be given equal billing, if not more. So she practically wrote them all, and David Eddings just kind of did the dialogue by the sounds of it, or what have you. Which makes sense, because every single character in his books sounds exactly the same as everyone else. Like even the bad guys, they're also like genial and gregarious, and they're all just. I think if Wheel of Time is successful, it'll open the door to a lot more high fantasy adaptations. Because I think the ones that if we remove Harry Potter from the equation, because obviously that was aimed at children at the start and what have you, every kind of fantasy property that has done very, very well has been kind of not so upfront with the magic. So Lord of the Rings, magical creatures, yes, but actual magic, it's kind of vague and fluffy, and Gandalf can make rocks glow every so often and shoot white light out of his staff, but make himself big all of a sudden, and then tomorrow. But that's pretty much it. Game of Thrones, obviously, again, magical creatures that are just on the periphery for a long time, and then they kind of come to the forefront towards the end. So that's really it. The Witcher, which has been a successful first season, which is probably the most magical of things. But again, it kind of, even Geralt's magical properties, they really downplayed, because obviously he can do signs and he can do magic, and I think you only see it in the first episode actually. Even all the kind of potion making and stuff was limited as well. So yeah, I think if this one, and obviously going by the teaser trailer, which we talked about last time, with how much they were upfront about the magic that's in that, I think if this one is successful and people kind of welcome it, then we'll see more like properties like maybe Eddins and one that I think would be a really, really good adaptation would be the Farseer trilogy, at least original Robin Hobb. And obviously that has got quite a strong magic system in it as well. So yeah, I think it would open the doors a little bit, because I think it is still like a barrier to entry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because even some fantasy fans, we're in some fantasy writing groups, and you get some fantasy writers that want grimdark and they want low fantasy, and they're kind of like, oh, I don't really like too much magic.
No, I know, and it's a weird. I mean, that's for a different, I think, conversation. Because I get a little bit annoyed when people kind of like backtrack and they're just like, well, what is grimdark, or what is your favorite grimdark movie, and they choose stuff that is not grimdark at all. But anyway, so before we jump in, because we're kind of pressed for time, what of the, if we talk about the classic fantasy, when fantasy was at its real peak, which would have been the 80s, mid to late 80s, early 90s, which is basically
the silver age of fantasy.
Exactly.
Or was it the golden age?
I would say that it's the golden age. But what would you say? What? I mean, apart from, you said Robin Hobb. What would you want to see? What would you say would be the best and most successful? Not like, if you don't even consider what the cost would be to make it.
I think the original Rift War saga, the trilogy, would be very good, because I think it has a lot of the pluses that Wheel of Time has for it, which is that it's got a diverse cast of, and by diverse I mean age and background. It has, like, younger people, older people, mixture, not quite the mixture of gender, but that can easily be fixed. Has a good storyline. It has magic. It has parallel universes as well. It has different kind of races and stuff like that. And I think that one would be really interesting to do. And it's a really, really good story. And what I like about it as well is that the second book, on the face of it, has apart from having the same characters in it, has absolutely nothing to do with the first one.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Earthsea books, because I mean the second Earth, I mean Ged is barely in the second book.
Yeah, but like the second one in the Rift War, I don't know if you've read them, but like so like no spoilers in case people haven't, but a character is getting married, and someone tries to assassinate him from this cult, and it hits someone else. It hits the person he's marrying, and the only place that the only cure for it is this place that's deep in enemy territory for this other people. And that's basically the story. That's on the face of it. That's the story of it. And it's like, and then when you get to the third book, it all ties everything together in a really kind of skillfully done way. And I've read some of the other Rift War books, the spin-offs, and some of them are good and some of them aren't. The character of Pug and Thomas, to an extent, are both really good examples from a writing point of view of what happens when you let your main characters become too powerful. Because that is definitely a problem with the books and the Rift War, the Raven Epheis Rift War books after the third one, because he just like he starts coming up with plot reasons to keep Pug and Thomas out of the story, because it's like these two could just appear and just solve this issue.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah, and it's like it's a really, really good example for if you are looking to get into writing. I mean, the first Magician is one of my favorite books of all time, and I actually do recommend it to a lot of people. So especially people that have maybe read one or two fantasy books and they want to read more, like Magician is really good. And then you can carry on with the I'd read the main trilogy for sure. But yeah, it's a great, if you're looking to get into writing, it's a great way to study what not to do with some of your characters. Because you do kind of fall into it as well. And a lot of people do it. Like I watched the Matrix 4 trailer there the other day, and the Matrix, as much as I love the first one, and I like the second one quite a lot, not so much the third one, but that has the same problem where Neo has become too powerful too quickly. Yeah. It's like the third film, they just lock him away in an underground station for a while. It's like we need to keep him out of the story. And then he's barely in the third one, then it's it's like he's too powerful. And another good thing to study, which people that listen to this podcast and show for how to do it correctly, is the Wheel of Time, because especially now we're going to be talking about the Dragon Reborn at the end, where you think, oh, Rand has this artifact that may make him too powerful. When you read on the next books, Robert Jordan does a very, very good kind of, and it's not even a cheating thing, it's something that's consistent with the world, where it's like limiting, there's power creep on other sides, but also there's reasons why Rand cannot continue with this like all-powerful kind of path as well. So that's a good way, that's a good counterpoint to kind of study organic and good ways to kind of stop making your main character too powerful. But yeah, long answer. But I would be very, very interested in seeing the Rift War saga done. How about you? You can't say Earthsea because obviously that's been done. So
no, I would probably like to see the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant by Stephen Donaldson, just because it's so different.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of an anti-hero, and it kind of turns the whole world on its end, or like the fantasy tropes on its end. Although there are a couple of things in there that they probably have to cut out. There's there's rape and stuff like that, and then that's from Thomas Covenant himself being the hero.
Yeah, he's a very likable character.
And so that would be, but otherwise, I mean, so that would be interesting to see how they tackle that. It would probably be a real epic too. Otherwise, I'd like to see maybe Black Sun Rising by C.S. Friedman, because it's also very much, it's kind of got the Shannara thing and the Wheel of Time thing going on, where it kind of takes place in like our world.
Yeah.
And it's not quite fantasy. I mean, it's not quite in the traditional medieval fantasy world, and there's a lot of parallel storylines and stuff like that. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Wheel of Time is successful, that they would pick up.
That's the way it's done. Once something is successful, like you look at Game of Thrones was successful, and they've gone, okay, well, what's like Game of Thrones? What's a successful? And they've looked at they're like, well, The Witch is really successful because it's got the books have always done well, and they've got the video game, and then the Wheel of Time is the most successful fantasy property of all time in terms of books. And so they've looked at that and they're going, okay, so if these ones are popular, what are the next ones we're going to do, right?
Exactly.
And it's like kind of, and you do kind of, and that's why, I mean, obviously I want Wheel of Time to be successful, because like it's a big, part of my reading life, and I want to see it, but I want to see what else comes because of it as well. And but I'd really like to, and this is a little bit after it's more modern, but I'd really like to see them tackle the Malazan series, which I don't know how they do it, because it's so convoluted at this point now. Like, I mean, there's the 10 main books, but then there's prequels, and then there's spin-offs that are inside the main 10 series, and now there's sequels to it as well. Because obviously the main story didn't get, from a whole host of characters, didn't get wrapped up in the main 10 books. But the reason why I'd like to see it is because the original book, Gardens of the Moon, first it started off as a D&D And then it was developed like Steven Erikson and Ian Esselman, who did some of the spin-offs, wrote it as a screenplay for a film. So I'd like to see it go like full circle. I know that there was people sniffing around it a while back.
Yeah, I heard rumors of that.
Yeah, but it was just
they were going to do.
It was specifically just for the second book, Dead House Gates. I think they were looking to turn it into a movie because it would really, really work really well as a film, because it's kind of like, because as the way with the Malazan books, the first 3 or 4 keep jumping around with different sets of characters and there's little links back. But Dead House Gates is quite standalone to an extent until you get later on in the series, and it's a terrific story, and it's a really, really great it's a great book, and the ending as well is just like, it's I don't know if you've ever read it, but the ending of that book is just.
I've read some. I haven't read. I haven't engaged in it, and I do want to though. I do want to.
Dead House
well,
Gates
anyway.
Before you go on, Dead House Gates is worth just picking up and reading on its own without even reading Gardens of the Moon, because it's quite. It's pretty much standalone from Gardens of the Moon. There's a little bit of crossover, but nothing that you really need. It's a really, really good book, and it's that's a funny one, because that's like, a lot of people say Malazan is grimdark, but it's very, very magical. Like there's a real, like, a huge magic system that's like really integral to the plot.
I think there's a lot, and I think both you and I see it a lot in the fantasy groups that we are in. And I think it's the scholarly part of me, kind of like, I get a little bit, I don't know, queasy from some of the comments that people, like, when they talk about what is urban fantasy, and they're just like, oh, it's these and these urban fantasies. It's like, yeah, but no, that's not urban fantasy, really. I mean, you have to look at when it's kind of, when the genre was created, and you can't start applying stuff back. For me, that doesn't work, but I think that's the scholar part. I mean, and it's like to say, it's like I'm in this indie music group, and it's the same. It's like, oh, what is indie music? Is it stuff that's just put on indie labels, or is it actually a musical style?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's for a whole other podcast.
And it is as Wade and Jennings once said, I hate labels, man.
Yeah, he's indie.
He was he made his own genre, didn't he, really? Him and Willie Wilson and Chris Christopherson. But that's a story for another time, another turning of the wheel.
Our indie music podcast.
Easing the listener.
That would be a great one. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the final chapters of the Dragon Reborn, and I will start. These last chapters obviously start slow, as we're still kind of in the whole realm of build up.
Because the first chapter is from Perrin's point of view. That's why.
Well, and you've got to, because if the chapters, I think there are basically 2 chapters here that have Perrin in them before he starts going into the stone.
Because one of them kind of splits between a few different POVs, doesn't it? Yeah.
And I like that. I wish there could have been more of that, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and that's what we talked about in a couple of previous episodes. The way he's set the story with the time, with everyone on a linear part of time, and where you've had some characters that have been traveling. Matt was like laid up in bed for a long time, and it meant that some people had like some things to do, some people had nothing to do, and so you get to this point where everyone's converged on it, and it can jump around because everyone's in the same location. I wonder, like, when he'd become a few years down the line, like if he would have done it differently, because I think, like I say, I don't think there's enough story in this book to have a nearly 700 page book, which is one of the shorter Week of Time books, but there's enough stuff that happens in it that's interesting, and that's good. And I think that, like, I don't really mind the Rand not being in it a lot aspect, because I think that I like
that too.
Yeah, I think it works quite well, especially in this point where people are kind of like, I'm sure I just saw Rand.
Yeah, that is an interesting. He's just running around. What's that? Was that Rand?
Matt,
Or?
I mean, the scene when we get to it, we can talk about it more depth. But the scene where Matt's up on the roof and then there's like just a bunch of people just all appear on the roof and like,
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure I saw Rand just climbing up the stone of Tyr. But it can't be. It can't be. But like, so I just think the thing that Matt should have been the main character of this book. It should have been Matt's book, but because it was like he's not in the first half of the book because he's just been healed and he's in bed, really makes the start of the book a bit of a slog. Like if he could have just found something else for him to do at the start of the book, it would have.
Yeah. Well, what happens here basically? They arrive in Tyr, and it's the same sense of wrongness in this city as it is in Ilion. Perrin ends up in a blacksmith shop, and all of a sudden he just like starts making stuff, which is like I found that's like a really weird thing to happen so close to the end of the book. It's like, yeah, okay, well, I'm gonna start working as a blacksmith as if nothing is going on.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. This is one of the things about this book, is that there's so much of a focus on Perrin, but then he has very little to do in the whole book, and especially at the end. Like his like arc at the end, where it's like it's basically him coming to terms with like being attached to Fail, basically. That's his arc where he goes, okay, well, I'm gonna embrace this, but it doesn't affect anything else that goes on. It's like a very insular kind of character arc compared to everything else that's going on. But it's also as well the stakes aren't quite as high as everything else that's going on because you don't care about Fail. We've just met her.
Yeah, no, I know, and that's what kind of I felt like the issue with this book overall, and I think this is very clear here as we come to the end of it, is that there doesn't feel like there's an imminent danger, because a lot of it is traveling. They're talking about it, but you don't, as a reader, sense it. And I think when I was thinking about the teaser, it was kind of the same. Apart from the Murdral that we see, and we see some other monsters, but it just didn't feel, and that's what I meant with them being pristine looking. There's like no sense of the fight.
Yeah, but I think what that is as well, though, is because we know, I think what they're doing is at the start, particularly in the first half of the season, by the sounds of it, is they're making Legane out to be the threat. And as we know as readers now, because we're up to like, well, I've read the whole thing and you've read up to book 3, we know that he is not.
Yeah.
Right?
It's quite obvious in the first book. He's not.
Yeah, exactly. But like, so for people that are kind of like, because if you look at the teaser again, like when Lan mentions the Dark One is looking for your friends, it cuts to Legane fighting. So it's like, it's one of those things where I think it's going to do to casual viewers or people that know, they're kind of saying like Legane is the threat, right? Which is, I think, will be fine for the TV show, but that's because we know that he isn't. So when you're looking at it, it's like, well, where is the threat here? But you are right about this book, because the main threat, like you see him in it's all done in like kind of dreams and visions and people looking at stuff and people kind of mention it at the end. But like Belial is just like, he's not mentioned until the chapter called The Hammer. It's the first time that he's mentioned. I think, actually, at the end of the previous chapter, Matt has like a dream of him, like with all the people in a net, doesn't he? And that's the first time he's kind of mentioned. And it's the same. It's funny because it's the same. That's the same issue with the Eye of the World as well.
Yeah, there were a lot of similarities for this book and Eye of the World, especially towards the end, because the threat doesn't show itself until the end. Although we've had a lot of threats before. I mean, there are things that are threatening here, but in this book and towards the end, it's something that we haven't seen before. That is the threat, really.
Yeah, because it's at the end. Because at the end, like, you know, that the climax is to do with Rand, and it switches back to Rand's POV again. So so the main, so obviously, um, the girls have their threat, which is the Black Ajar. Matt has that kind of thing of trying to rescue them, which is fine. Perrin is kind of left out of it. Again,
Yeah,
really, his threat is really just like there's no threat. It's just like I have to find Fail in the world of dreams. You never feel like he's not going to find her, and you never feel like he's not going to get out of the world of dreams. So the main kind of like threat then is like the Forsaken, but they're only really interested in Rand, and we don't see anything from Rand quite a lot until and then
exactly.
obviously then there's obviously like kind of like a little twist at the end there, where like the person who's kind of been the main threat for the first 3 books comes back into the fold of it again, but again, um, we don't really see his presence a lot in this book because we're not with Rand.
No.
And this character knows who the Dragon Reborn is, so he's been leaving Matt and Perrin alone at this stage.
Yeah.
But I would wonder if there was more. Like I think it works that Rand isn't in it in one way because I think it works with that kind of like what's he up to, people looking for him and that sort of stuff. But also, if he was in it a little bit more, that the threat of the Forsaken would have been more apparent as well.
Mm. Yeah, I get that, and I mean, and especially when you listen to it, which I was doing here today, I think the narrator gives a lot of weight to the Forsaken and how they speak, but then in the end, they're maybe not as powerful as you're led to believe. I mean, obviously, we were talking about that last time that they're kind of like easily disposed of. Although Belial isn't that easily.
No, is not. We'll come back to him in a little bit. So like, so in this chapter anyway, so Perrin does his blacksmith stuff, and he takes the hammer with him as well for his hard work. And Moraine reappears and says like Belial is the High Lord Salmon, and it's a trap because they want Rand to take Calendor basically because he's the only one who can hold it, and then they'll capture or kill him and what have you. And then Loyal just drops a little bit of info about him being called the Net Weaver. So like any kind of like dreams that we've seen recently of people weaving nets, you're like, oh, that's that guy, right? And then we found out that there's loads of eel. Is that how to say that? Eel, yeah. There's loads knocking about the place. There's just like there's loads up on the rooftops. And Moraine is like, that's weird because they're not mentioned in the prophecies. And then that's like, we'll park that until later.
And it's fun. And then we get into, I mean, basically we don't have to split it into the chapters. We can just like kind of, because now it does flow on quite easily from, it's not as bound to the chapters. And as we said, there's a lot of things that happen in the chapters. I mean, different POVs.
Yeah. So the next one, because there's one more chapter. The next chapter is kind of contained for just one POV. It's Nynaeve's, isn't it? And that's the one where the girls are captured again.
Yes, and this time because I what's his name? Julian Sands is what I want to call him.
Julian Sands.
Warlock.
Julian Sandar. They should get him to play Julian when
they should.
It's like it's almost the same name.
Yeah, we don't even have to change the credits. You can just be himself.
I have to say I'm a fan of Julian, and like if we talked about it last time about merging Hurin and Julian together, I hope to do that. It is the Julian guy. I like his I just like I would just love to see how they visualize him because he's wearing like a little Tommy Cooper hat.
Yeah.
And he's wearing clogs because of all the mud that's knocking around. And he has like a little bamboo stick.
He's very, yeah.
I'd love to see
maybe if Tommy Cooper hadn't been dead, he could have been.
Tommy Cooper. I just can't. I can't wait to see what he looks like. That's.
I think for all our American and Canadian listeners, they probably don't know what we're talking about.
Tommy Cooper is like this, not a lot. You know.
I think people will have to Google Tommy Cooper.
He's a funny guy. Tommy Cooper was a funny guy. It's never really Christmas. You know, one of my we can talk when we get to Christmas. We can talk about it a little bit more. But one of two of my big traditions at Christmas, actually three of them, is I always watch Blackadder's Christmas Carol.
Yeah. Okay.
Christmas week, and then Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I watch some Tommy Cooper and I watch Markham and Wise.
Okay.
And that is Christmas for me.
That is.
And now, and so you can imagine every time that I watch Tommy Cooper, I'm just thinking about Julian Sander.
Probably. So yeah, he betrays them, and they're going to be used as bait, basically, which we basically knew. Really,
yeah, we know it was going to happen, and also as well, kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Because Rand is just going there for Calendar. Because Rand is just like, he just wants Calendar so he can just be like, I'm done with all this. Because he's convinced that like the Dark One is there and he's going to get Calendar and kill him. And I know like later on, just to skip ahead a little bit, Bilal kind of says like, you know, if you don't touch Calendar, we're going to touch these women and that kind of stuff. But he's going there to get it anyway.
It's a very Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker kind of situation.
Yeah.
Between Rand and Bilal. Yeah. Anyway, so then we get into Matt and Tom. Tom is sick, and they go to Mother Gwenna, and this is the whole. It's an interesting part here because Matt's just like, but I was just here. I was looking at this place, and the girls were here.
Yeah.
Mother Gwenna tells him.
Oh, the interesting thing to mention just before the end of the last one, though, is that Leandrin says that there's 13 half men on the way.
Yeah.
And they know that 13 and 13, they can turn people without we can turn into the shadow without choosing to be, which is kind of interesting.
It's an interesting part, and also kind of prophesized, wasn't it? The 13.
Yeah, it was in one of the I think was it Egwene's on Eve's acceptance.
I think it was Egwene's.
Yeah, he hears about it. Someone here, I can't remember now, but when we may have a special guest on a little while, John from WotUp will join us, and he will remember. He'll know whose it was. It was kind of foreshadowed before.
So anyway, she tells him that she obviously knows that he's not from around those parts because of his accent, and then basically he finds out where the girls are, the Stone of Tyr, and she also recommends that he grows a beard. Which is interesting because I think he has one in the show already.
Yeah, he does. Like, because they've aged them all up a little bit in the show, so they can do more things with them, I suppose, and to them than they can with kids, and to make it kind of like feel like YA. But yeah, it's Tom is just he just keeps getting just taken out of the action, doesn't he? Every book.
Well, I mean, I understand it here because obviously Robert Jordan wanted Matt to go into the stone himself, and he didn't really know what he was going to do with Tom. He didn't have Tom hanging around, but he just way too many because you have Aiel, you have Julian Sands, you have Matt, Perrin, and Rand in there, and then the girls. So what is Tom going to end up doing?
But it's just funny though, isn't it? It's like he's in every single book. Yeah. He's a well-loved character, but in the first one, he fights in the drawl and seemingly dies, right?
Yeah.
Second book, he just appears, and then murders a king off page, and then he's gone. Then the third one, he just pops up in Tarvalon, hangs around with Matt for a bit, gets really sick, and then he just goes to bed in Mother Gwenna's house. I do love the Tom and Matt is a great pairing.
Yeah.
And it's great because you get a lot of like, Katie Sedai said it last week. You get a lot of, because obviously it's the first time we're getting a lot of POV from Matt, and you get like his thoughts and what he's thinking is very different to what he says a lot of the time. And then just the random things that he does, like when he pays Mother Gwenna, he's like, "This is the money for this. And this is a kiss from me."
Then Moraine thinking that Rand is in Tyr. That's when they all kind of convey on the stone, the others.
It started, yeah, it started.
Yeah, they're starting to. And Perrin and Fael have both dreamt of him holding Kalimdor.
Yes.
And Fael walks into a trap. And Perrin also walks into a trap. They all walk into traps.
Yeah, so like Fael walks into Moraine's trap, and then she's just because Moraine is trying to say like you, Loyal, and Fael's go to Tarvalon, like you know, get out of here. And Fael goes upstairs and she walks into a trap meant for Moraine, and Moraine is just not interested.
Yeah.
Just like whatever. She just doesn't care one little bit. She's like, look, she's just walked in. She's in the world of dreams. Like her body's there. She's probably gonna die. I'm out of here. See you later on. And Perrin's like, I'm not leaving. And she's like, whatever. I
don't care.
I don't care about your storyline, she says.
I am Robert Jordan in this scenario. I don't care.
So Perrin follows Fael into the trap, and he gets Loyal to watch his back. It's like if anyone comes after, it's like who's going to come after you? No one cares.
Yeah. And then comes my favorite part. I mean, and we were talking about this before. I mean, I do like the ending of this book, even if it's kind of like haphazard. There's a lot of things going on, and I wish that the whole book could have been more like these last chapters. I mean, in the end, I don't think that the last chapters makes the book any more endearing as a whole book, but it definitely ends on a high note.
It does, and it's the end that it wraps up. It wraps up a little opening trilogy, in a way as well, and sets up a lot of things to come. Especially with the Aiel and everything as well. Like they're very, very prominent now at this point, especially in this chapter because, like you know, Matt's scouting out the stone. He's been looking a way to get in, and he decides the best way to do is to climb up the wall. And he's like, I'm not doing this, but I'm going to do it. But I'm not doing it. It's ridiculous, but I'm going to do it. And then he sees someone doing it already, and he's like, that guy's a fool. But,
and that's a funny part because he's like, there's Aiel running around. There's Julian. I would try to say his name right. Julian Sandar instead. Everybody's like running around here, and he thinks he sees Rand, and then he climbs up, and now he uses his fireworks.
He does, yeah. It's just like it's so like it's so like unneeded as well because like he was going to use the fireworks just as a discretion. Who knows what he was going to use them for in the first place? His plan was to climb up the thing, right? The Aiel appear and like he beats a couple of them, and there's a load of them there, and you kind of have a little chat about things. And the Aiel are just like, just don't tell anyone we're here. Julian, don't tell anyone that we're here. Like that's it. And he's like, yeah, fine, no worries, mate. They go off. And then like Julian's like, listen, I can get you in the stone because I'm a thief catcher, not a thief taker.
No.
So let's go. And Matt's like, all right, I'm just going to do this first. And so he goes and blows a hole in the side of the stone with fireworks. And then he plunges in through the gap. And a load of defenders come at him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is the reason why I was doing this. So I didn't have to."
And then there's a lot of fun scenes there because he's like fighting people with his quarterstaff, and then there's the one part where he just puts the quarterstaff on his shoulder, turns around, and just knocks one out.
Yeah, it's a little bit later because like so Matt goes into the gap that he makes, and then just like he's like, oh yeah, I should have gone downstairs. This is why I was distraction. And like starts fighting, and Julian comes in with his bamboo stick and helps them out as well. And then like cuts to Rand, and Rand's like heard fireworks and a big explosion, but he's like, whatever, I just want rid of these dreams. I'm sick of them.
Yeah. And then we get to at the same time though, the girls they're all bruised and beaten. And I think that could be a very good thing in the show.
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny one though. It's a funny one, and this is what the difficulty of adapting seasons 2 and books 2 and 3. Even if you do it as one season, or if you do it as repeated seasons, because the repetition comes through quite a lot. Because this is the second time in this book that the girls have been captured.
Yeah.
They all got captured at the end of the second book as well. And it's like, you can't, it'd just be, and this scene is interesting. Like, I like how, you know, they're stripped of the one power, they're blocked from the one power, should I say. And it's like, well, how are we going to deal with this? And she uses her new skills that she's got to go into the world of dreams.
Yeah.
And see how it can affect in the real life. I think it's really effective. And she thinks it's working better than it actually is, to the point where it doesn't work quite as well as they want to. But it just kind of, it'd be boring, and people would, because it's the same thing that's happened to them again and again and again and again, and it makes them look. I know that Robert Jordan's doing it for a way, because he wants them to say, look, these girls don't know everything. They're not as world wise as to what they think.
No.
You get into these kind of things, but the boys don't. Right, the boys are kind of just like, they're just as less world wise as anyone. But like, Rand has just travelled across the entire continent on his own with Dark Friends and Forsaken chasing him, and he's fine. Matt's just travelled from Camelin down to Tyr with grey men chasing him. He's fine. Perrin's fine. You know, and it's just, it needs to change a little bit and be a little bit updated, because for a variety of reasons. And so if you were to condense books 2 and 3 into one season, which I think they probably might, that there's no way they're going to have the girls getting captured 3 times.
No. It would be crazy.
Yeah, because it's not great for their characters either. Like, it's just, once is fine, but like 3 times is just, again, like I said last time, it's like I love the Lord of the Rings books and the films, but I remember quite vividly sitting in the cinema in Return of the King, and you know the bit where, like, you think where Shelob stabs Frodo, like, that's what I had just someone groan and go, "Oh my God, not again!" Because like, it's the 4th or 5th time where Frodo's been like injured by something, or thought to be left for dead by something, and it's something that they're going to have to really kind of look at. But I do like the scene, though. I do like how they're trapped in there, they're blocked from the one power, and it's like, well, let's go into the world of dreams and try and deal with it there.
The 2 last chapters basically kind of intermingle a little bit, because I mean, the last chapter is basically, it was interesting because on the audiobook it was a lot longer, but it's the interview with Robert Jordan that they have in like the end of every single audiobook. It's the same interview.
Okay.
So it's like, so at the end of the narrator for the first time has to say, like, this is the end of book 3, which he hadn't done before.
Right.
Just to show that there's an interview coming afterwards.
Oh, okay.
So, but I mean, basically, so Rand reaches the heart of stone, or Heart of the Stone, faces Bilal. They have a fight, actually probably like the most intense fight we've seen so far.
Yeah, because Rand is well aware that he's going to lose this fight as well, the longer it goes on. And you know, if Bilal's plan wasn't for him to get Kalandor, like, he would have probably killed him almost straight away, because like, he's just like, Rand points out, is like, well, I have a heron on my sword, but like, and it's the sword swords made with the power as well, which is like a black flame and a red flame, which will look pretty cool. He's like, I've got a heron on mine, but it was my father's. Like, he has one on his, and he's deserved it. He's a real blade master. And then what's good as well when that fight is going on is that, like, all the ale and the defenders of the stone all pour into the room as well, and they're all fighting around alongside them, and that's going on, and Bilal is
and then Moraine saves Rand by bale firing Bilal.
Yeah, she loves a bit of balefire.
She does. We talked about that last time, how careless she is.
Yeah. And where does she learn it? And where does she? I mean, she alludes to, like, she says, like, in because like when they're back at the inn, she says, I've learned lots of things in the last year that I didn't know before. So we find out that it's been a year since the Eye of the World as well. But it's like, well, where did you learn this balefire?
Yeah. And then Balsamon appears and knocks her out, kind of. You really never find out what happens to the rest after this. It's basically just Rand.
They're all just stood around.
Yeah. And Rand takes Calendar and then chases Balsamon because he just like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. So like he does something to Rand, doesn't he? So Rand dies for Calendar, and then Balsamon does something to him that makes Rand feel like it's gone on for centuries and it's like full pain. But then when his fingers touch Calendar, it just like goes. And then he's like, Balsamon runs off, and Rand chasing is like, I'm the hunter now.
Yeah, and then they run around at the same time. Matt and Julian save the girls thanks to them knocking out the Black Ajah that is outside. Yeah,
so like Egwene blocks them in the sleep, but it doesn't quite work fully. So they can almost, so they're still blocked, but they're blocked as well. So the trap's still they're still trapped in the cell, and Matt just walks in, picks up the key off the Black Ajah that's just sat there, just staring at him.
Yeah,
and opens the door, and they're not very pleased that he's rescued them.
No, but he's just like, and then there's a lot of back and forth. Per and Freeze fail, and then they wake up. And then they're just like somewhere else. They're like not around anymore.
They're just in an inn.
Yeah. It's really weird. They're just like
sat outside, just twiddling his thumbs, just like, it's just it's a bit of an anticlimax, that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
it was all a dream.
It was all a dream. It was all in the dream. And that's where random Balsamon are as well. They're in the world of dreams. And Balsamon is just trying to get away from him, doing all these kind of tricks, like making the place flood, and Rand just turns it into air. Like he's just like, he says that all this power that he has is like he's walking barefoot on a razor's edge. Yeah. And it's just too much power, really. But anything that Balsamon throws at him, Rand is just wassing it away. And then he plunges Calendar through. Well, first though, he sees him, he's kind of like shrinking, isn't he, into like a normal kind of man. And he sees all these black threads coming off him.
Yeah, and he chops them off.
Chops them all off, and
our friend shows up.
He is, here he is. And then he just plunges Calendar through his chest and kills him, and he thinks that the Dark One is dead.
Is dead. And he proclaims himself the dragon, and everybody kneels in front of him.
Even the ale as well. So Chris has had to go, but we've been replaced and upgraded by John from WotUp.
Hi everybody, I don't know if I'm an upgrade, but definitely a replacement at the very least.
Yeah, definitely a replacement. It's like, that's one of those things. It's like, what did you think about this book? It was definitely a book.
It was a book. It had pages and words.
Yeah. How are you doing? Before we talk about the very end of the Dragon Reborn, how's things with yourself?
Fantastic. Things are good here. The channel's been doing well. I'm almost at 10,000 subscribers, like very, very close. I think I'm like 40 off right now. So that should happen today, which is neat. I had a few exclusives over the last month since I've been on last time, I think. And the trailers come out since then too. So that's been huge.
It is, yeah. We'll talk about those things after we've wrapped up the Dragon Reborn, especially some of the scoops that you had recently as well. And one of these scoops was like it broke out across the internet. There was other places picked it up, other news sites picked it up, which was huge.
They did, yeah. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool to see my channel's name in other people's news. It was nice.
Yeah, it's great that they credited you, because a lot of these places sometimes forget to credit people and go like, someone has said this, and it's like, well, yeah, can you say who that someone was, please?
I wouldn't say forget.
yeah, not forget. So we were just before you came on, we were talking with Chris about Rand just has killed what he thinks is the Dark One with Calendar, and a few people think he is as well. Like we pick up the story again with Matt, and they're all kind of sat around, they're having a little chat, Ruark's there as well, and Berlin walks in with a message from Lanfear at the end as well. But he actually mentions Shaitan as well, and he says he thinks the place rumbles, or it might be his imagination. But yeah, the Moraine doesn't seem to even know who she thinks it might be. Ishmael. It's actually Egwene that kind of pieces it together, isn't it? She's like from the notes that Varen gave her. I always kind of thought that like that always kind of did it for me. It was like I didn't think that he was the Dark One anyway, even from the Eye of the World. But I was kind of thought he was Ishmael anyway. Like it never was any much of a surprise for me. But then, like, I know that some people that I've spoken to when it comes to this part of the Dragon Reborn, they're kind of still like, well, who was he? Right? Because they're just kind of like, it's just like, well, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But like, I always kind of thought it was much like how it was never a secret that Rand was the Dragon Reborn. I never found it was much of a mystery that Ishmael was Baalzamon either.
I think if you paid attention, and I'm trying to think way back to my very first read, which was I would have been for the Dragon Reborn maybe in my early teens. I think it came out, or maybe I was 12. So it was I was young anyway. I would say I never picked up on it until I was a little bit older and actually paid attention to the books when I read it, or I read them through once and I read it through second, third time, and I know that's going to happen. But I remember from the very first time I read the books, thought it very strange that he fought the same person as the big bad guy 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
I was like, well, is it just every book he fights him? Like, what's happening here? Like, I didn't quite understand what was happening at first, but now later on that I've read it, and no spoilers, of course, beyond the book, but it was interesting that they did that, and I don't think they're going to do that with the show.
Well, we can talk about a little bit more about that in a second as well, because me and Chris were just talking about the similarities of this book between the first 2 books, actually, because even the end of this book, with how the main threat just kind of comes out of nowhere, really, in a way, like it does in the Eye of the World. But I always thought as well, why I always kind of, I would have been about this. I was older than you when I first started reading Wheel of Time. I picked it up in 2000 or 2001, so I was 18. Yes. How old am I? Yeah, if it's 2001, I was 18. I'm 30. Oh yeah, so I was 20 when 18. What? It was 20 years ago, so I was 18. Right? When I first read it. So obviously I'd read some stuff before, and the one of the reasons why I picked up on it pretty much early on was because, and it's the same reason for later on in the series with another character, which we can talk about off there because it's spoilers for in the future, but you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like, if you have someone in a prologue for a book, then they have to be in it at some point or affect the story in some kind of way. So obviously in Eye of the World, Ishmael's in the prologue, and then it's like, well, he's gone. If you don't think that Ishmael and Baalzamon are the same person, because like, you know, when you do go, because a lot of the time, a lot of people, one of the main criticisms of Eye of the World is that the prologue doesn't seemingly have anything to do with the main story. But when you go back, you're like, oh yeah, well, Ishmael is Baalzamon and yada yada yada. So that was one of the things that I kind of picked up on, and obviously that thing happens again in another book in the future, which now obviously has nothing to do with. But at the time, it may not have had nothing to do with it. So yeah, it's a nice. I mean, this end of the Dragon Reborn is kind of like, well, this is who this was, and this is like the threat is still out there. So what did you think of the Dragon Reborn as it stands in the first 3 books of the series?
I would say out of the first 3 books, my favorite was the second one, The Great Hunt. Dragon Reborn was a close second. Eye of the World is a distant third, I guess. I did like the Eye of the World. It's not my least favorite Wheel of Time book, but out of the first 3, it's the least favorite. I like the Eye of the World, but the problem with a lot of the books, and the problem that you mentioned earlier, is that this one was very parent-centric, and he was kind of just hanging out for a lot of it. You know what I mean? Like he was asleep with Fael, like you said. So if you don't particularly care for a character, or if you're not interested in the storyline, some of these books are very, very heavy into that particular character. And there have been reads where I've done a read and I really didn't want to read about Perrin at all. And I would force myself to read his passages, or I didn't want to read about Matt, or I didn't want to read about Rand, or I was having a problem with the Gwaine storyline. I don't want to read that. Or Elaine, especially later on in the book series.
Yeah.
And it changes, for me at least anyway. Every time I read it, it changes a little bit. There's characters I like and don't like and would really excited to read and don't want to read. So a first-time reader who may not identify or like a certain character, some of these books are going to be hard.
Yeah, definitely. And some of the choices that he makes, so we talked about it in a couple of episodes before, like Matt almost becomes the main character of this book, but he doesn't enter it until about halfway through.
Yep.
And a lot of the time when people think of the Dragon Reborn, they think of the Matt moments because they're very memorable, like, Gawain and Galad. The interplay with Tom, the ending, blowing a hole in the side of the Stone of Tyr.
The chickens.
The chickens. And then everyone remembers then, obviously, Rand's bits. But like Perrin's, like there's a big focus on Perrin at the start of the book for big chunks of it. But then he's kind of just completely sidelined at the ending as well, which is a strange choice because, I mean, he is an introverted character compared to the other two characters, and he has a lot of internal challenges with accepting himself and whatever, and accepting the fail and all. So it makes sense to make his ending quite personal, but it's also as well one of the big problems is that if we had met Fail in book 1 or book 2 and we'd had more time to spend with her, then we might find what happens to her more effective. But because
she was only in half a book maybe at that point, I would say. Ish, maybe.
And Perrin didn't even seem to like her.
No. And then, but by the end he does. He goes to save her and rescues her, and it kind of ends on a big high note where he loves her and whatnot.
He does, he does. But like it's kind of like, so when she walks into that, because I kind of just, I was talking before you came on, like when she walks into the trap and Perrin's like, we have to save her, and Moraine's like, I don't care.
I really don't care.
I don't care, right? And it's a strange choice, but like I like the Dragon Reborn, and I like sections of it more than others. But one of my when I put on like kind of my writer's hat on it, it's like the structure of it is so strange because you have so Rand is like the MacGuffin of the book in a lot of ways. He goes off and everyone's kind of like, we have to go and find Matt. But then you have like Perrin is moving to find them, but then you have Matt who is in bed for the first half of the book, and then you have
pretty much
Egwene and the girls that are in the White Tower for the first half of the book. So you have like this really weird kind of situation where like two of the storylines, the characters aren't going anywhere. They're just kind of just sat around doing nothing, and then Perrin is just ambling off after
slowly ambling away.
Slowly ambling around. And then the story doesn't really kind of pick up then until Matt wakes up, because then there's movement where it's like, well, everyone needs to start going on. And then you can't avoid the repetition of certain things that characters are doing with book 2, which is, Matt is healed twice. He's kind of waylaid twice. The girls both go back. They're somewhere. They go to the White Tower. They're sent away somewhere. They get captured.
Yeah.
And in fact, in this book, they get captured twice. There's a little capture scene as well with the where the Ahil rescue.
When they meet Avienda for the first time, really.
Yeah. So and obviously then there's the ending as well, where it's like all the characters converge on the same place, and there's this big epic ending, and there's Forsaken fights and whatever. So there is this kind of repetition, which will be, I think, looking at it, like, again, if I put on like a writer's head or whatever, is that I don't think there's enough story in this book to sustain a full season. I don't even think there's enough story in this book to have a full book, to be honest. So the first 700 pages, to be honest with you.
I think if we're talking the show, are we going to talk the show now?
We can pivot to
we can pivot to that. I think what we're going to see is, Rafe has already mentioned that we're going to see elements of book 2 and book 3 in the first season, which to me means small storylines or plot lines that are tertiary, that aren't main, that, it's better to explain them or have them happen earlier on, or set them up at the very least. But I think that by the time we get to the Dragon Reborn, I think we're going to probably finish book 2 and 3 by the end of season 2. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Just because, and I mean, we may not. We may only get book 2 for season 2 because there's a lot of meat in book 2. Really, there's a lot of stuff going on to set up. But book 3, I think what they'll do is a lot of that will be amalgamated into either season 2 or season 3, along with a bunch of other stuff. Because, like you said, there are small bits of story in there, but they're not following everything word for word. They're not following. We see that now. We already know for sure that a lot of things in season 1 are not following the Eye of the World at all. So if they did follow the Dragon Reborn, it would be a pretty boring season. It really would. I mean, there'd be small bits of excitement, like when Matt's on screen and he's dodging the assassins, or they're running to the riverboat or whatnot, or when the girls get captured and the Aiel save them. All of that stuff will be really exciting, but all the stuff in between is just a lot of boring travel. At least on screen, it would be anyway. So I think you're right. It's not going to be a full season for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that kind of happens, like, you know, the Egwene being taught about the world of dreams by Verin could happen in book 2. Doesn't even, you know, they could have moved that, but that could happen at any time. The Aiel could be introduced a lot earlier, which it sounds like they're going to be popping up a little bit in season 1 anyway.
Mm-hmm. There's one mystery Aiel in season 1. Drake says so.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of things where, like, apart from the bits of action that happen, and that's particularly the end of it, that could really happen at any time, and it's one of those things as well, like with how the book 2, with how Moraine is missing for most of the book. So when you transfer that into a season of television, she is I've got old fashioned and a season of television.
In a season.
Well, she's the biggest star of the show, right?
She's billed as the lead for the first season, and I imagine it will be that way for quite some time. So they're going to change some stuff. They're going to have to.
Exactly. So it's like you don't cast. And I remember I said this once on the Dusty Wheel, and I saw one of the comments where they were like, "Well, they cast Sean Bean for the first season of Game of Thrones, but that's because they cast him to kill him, to be like, look, right, this guy's the biggest star. This is the kind of show that it is." You don't, and if you know Moraine was going to die at the end of Eye of the World, yeah, you could cast Rosamund Pike for that and have her in for one season, but she doesn't, and so you don't have like an active actor like Rosamund Pike and just be like, we don't really need you for this season. And that's
so you moved to Prague, you took your family here, but we're good for the next 2 years.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with Rand in this book. So by the time we get to this point of storyline, viewers will know that he's the Dragon Reborn. He will be one of the main focuses of the book, and you don't just take him out of it for the entire season and it's like he'll be around at the end. Okay, it does. So that's another thing where 2 and 3. So if they merge it together and do a mash of it, I always kind of wonder, did they do the ending at Falm at the same time as the ending of Tyr, or did they just merge it all? That's the tricky thing, because you have the Sean Chan and the Aiel being introduced at the same time, and then you have all this kind of stuff, and it's interesting. I'd like to know your thoughts on it. I mean, would you just move everything into the one same place, or would you have?
I would. If it were me, and again, I don't know what they're doing, but if it were me, I would have Falme and the events there and Tyr at the same time, and that would happen in season 2. So the big culmination of season 2 would be the events at the Stone of Tyr, but instead of, say, having the Aiel taking out the defenders of the stone and having Shamael and whatnot there, maybe change it so a lot of that is the Shan-Chan instead, just to make things a little more streamlined. Because if they're going to amalgamate them together, it's kind of like you said, repetition. It's the same type of battle, same type of capture, same type of things that are happening in each of the first 3 books. So to do that for 3 seasons of television would be, people wouldn't watch it anymore. They'd be like, well, we've seen this already. We want something new, we want something different. So if they amalgamated it and kind of crammed it all together, I think we'd see Tyr and Falme at the same time. That's my guess anyway.
And I think in a way as well, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Great Hunt as well. And I do enjoy the first 3 books, but it's almost kind of like, they want to get to the Shadow Rising as quickly as possible in the TV series, because that's when it's kind of
that's one of my favorite books. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I enjoy
yeah,
that one the best.
yeah. And the scope of it is so big as well. And it brings in so much different characters and different
Mhm.
cultures and different locations. And obviously, every single storyline matters in those books as well. In that
Yeah.
book, sorry, should I say? And it's something that can totally fill a full season of TV as well. So it's kind of like let's get there as quickly as we can, right? And which is no offense to people that like, because there is people that probably love the Dragon Reborn and think it's their favorite book,
Yeah.
and there's people that it was like, we can't cut this, we can't cut that. But um, I think this is the one that's probably going to get cut until we get later on in the series.
Yeah.
I think this book is the one that's going to be the most. That's going to be like, well, you know what, we just can't do this, so we have to move it here or we have to move it there.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I would say that we'll see Fael in season 2. We'll see a lot of the Aiel introduced. Big storylines with the Shan Chan. I guess season 2 of the show. That's my guess. Would be all of that. And I mean, to be fair, there's not a lot of information out about season 2 just yet, and they are filming, so they're doing a much better job of keeping things secret now, which makes my job harder.
Yeah. Because like honestly, there's people been casting these roles as well. Like we can know who's playing Elaine already because we've
Yeah.
because of Instagram and or things like that, and people like yourself with your contacts and everything. But there's no official word, and obviously then there's people. If Elaine's in it, then Gawain or Galad is probably in it as well. Unless the merging both go, we don't know who's playing them. We've not even heard a peep of the Sean Chan yet of like, you know, by this time when they were filming season 1, we'd already kind of seen leaks of White Cloaks and we'd seen this and this and this. So there's not even like a peep of that. So they're doing a good job. So, or maybe there is, and they're just like saying, just please don't mention it until the season's out. All right, let us launch season 1 and then just like, because that's the funny thing. That's the funny thing as well. Like, because you have this thing where they probably want to do like casting announcements because they know things are leaking out. People with the Kira Coveney situation, people know who she is, know who Alice. But they don't want to announce stuff for season 2 before season 1 is already out.
Yeah, well, my guess is we're going to see season 1 end Christmas, and then I would say starting in late January, maybe, or even February, they're going to give it some time, a cool off period where they're still enjoying hopefully the success of the show before they start hyping season 2, because they're going to film season 2 until February, and then after February they're done. Which, I mean, if the timelines are the same, we'll probably get season 2 early fall, I would say, rather than November. I think if they want to keep it the same, or they'll keep it the same release date every year too. I don't know what they're going to do there, but I don't think we're going to see anything official from them until next year for season 2 for sure. Like they don't want to step on the toes of season 1 stuff.
Exactly. And there's probably still things to announce for season 1 that
there 100% is. There's so much left to announce, although I don't believe they're going to announce a lot of it. I think most of it's going to be surprises, because we haven't seen a lot of the main characters yet that are important to the story that they have to be included. I mean, there has to be some sort of Forsaken or the Dark One or some overarching big bad guy for season 1, and the trailer, if you're not a book reader, makes it seem like Logain's a big bad guy. So, and we know he's not.
And we'll know pretty early on in the season that he isn't, because he will. There you go. Oh, if you're watching this show, we've talked about this book already, so the spoilers just in case you just joined in for the very first time. Obviously, Logain is spilled very early on in Eye of the World, like midway point of Eye of the World is still just, so it's like, you'll know in a TV show that like, well, he isn't the big bad because
he's taken care of. I would say by mid-season we're going to see him be his big I think we'll see it on screen. I think we'll see the big channeling ceremony and all the stuff happening. I think that will actually be shown because it'll be cool, and it'll also give a really good way to give like an exposition dump or something where they can explain how and why this happens, which, I mean, up to that point, it'll be like probably little tidbits, but that'll be the big explainer for the male half, the true source and stuff. I think.
And it'll be, and showing it on screen as well, it raises the stakes for, I presume that they're going to try and from how the teaser went, it seems like they are going to try and keep it as secret as who is the Dragon Reborn at the start. So it gives you
all of Amazon's marketing materials so far, all the official stuff, and this is just official, seems to suggest that it could be anyone, including Egwene or Nynaeve.
Yeah.
And I mean, anybody who's read the book series knows, I mean, there's no spoilers at this point because you're talking about the Dragon Reborn. You know it's Rand. However, new people who are watching the show won't know that. And because they're keeping it kind of secretive, I think that they're not really going to be as forward with the information as they were in the book. Like, I mean, the book you knew, you pretty much knew. But I think they may have more hints of Perrin, more hints of Matt because of the dagger and because of Perrin's wolves. And I think they're going to do that stuff. Also, where Nynaeve and Egwene could use the one power, maybe they're going to showcase them a bit more in different ways to maybe give little hints why they might be the dragon. And then the very last episode, just go, nope.
Yeah.
It's Rand. Sorry.
Yeah, it's good because I mean, showing Legaine's gentleman as well. If you say someone is watching it and they like Rand or Matt or Perrin and they think, well, those might be the dragon, it's like, wow, this might happen to this character, and it raises the stakes for them. And there's something I was going to say then, what you just reminded me of. Because one of the things, because in the book, obviously you know it's Rand straight away because it's like someone comes to town and it's like, who here is different? Well, that guy who's 6'6" with red hair, like no one else is like him.
He was born outside. Like his dad had a fever dream saying that he was born on the slopes of Dragon Mount. Like, you know, in like by chapter like 5.
It's like maybe I think it's him, but because of how they've how diverse the casting is, and I think this is one of the. I mean, obviously it's great to have it diverse anyway because it should be. But one of the advantages of being so diverse with the cast is that everyone looks different, right? So there's not just one person that looks different from everyone else.
Yeah.
It's like there's this blend of people that live in this place. So it's kind of like, yeah, there's a guy here with red hair, there's a guy here with this color skin, there's this person, there's this person, there's this person. Yeah. So it
helps hide it, helps hide the secret a little bit more, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. Because everyone's a bit of an idiot, really. Like when it's who could this outsider be? And it's like, well, this guy wasn't born here because everyone knows it because they remember Tam bringing him home as a baby as well. And it's like, oh, well, okay, fair enough. So before we kind of talk about a little bits of your scoops and everything, just briefly, what did you think of the trailer? Because we haven't really spoke about it since it came.
I was impressed. I really liked it. I think they did a very good job of showcasing a lot of different selling points for the show while keeping important stuff secret. So yes, they gave out a fair bit of information, but if the leaks and everything else are to be believed and all the information that we know, they haven't really shown anything beyond episode 6. So I think 7 and 8 are going to be completely shut down. We're not going to know much about them until the show airs. But the trailer itself, I think, did a really good job of showcasing the show. And I've talked to people who have not read the books that are not book fans, and they enjoyed it as well. And they think it looks like a really fun, exciting fantasy show, which I think was the point, right?
Yeah.
It also was very confusing to book fans as well as people who haven't read the books too, because I showed it to my wife and she had to watch it quite a few times she's like, well, I don't understand what's going on here or there, because she doesn't have any of the backstory of what's going on. I think a lot of that was for the book fans, and the book fans are watching it. And I swear I must have had about 300 messages saying that the blonde gentleman crying over the ring was Luce Theron. It's got to be him. And I was like, no, that's Kareem's warder. That's
the thing. Like,
we know who that is.
Because that's the thing. It was funny. It was funny looking at because you've done so much work into and you've seen Vikings and what have you. Yeah. But like everyone in Europe was kind of like, yeah, it's Peter Franson. Right? It's Peter Franson. We see him in other things and we know who he is. But like a lot of people kind of in the States, North America, who hadn't seen Vikings were all like, oh my God, it's Luce Theron. It's there. But
no, that's King Herod. Leave him alone.
Yeah. We know who this guy is. We know him. But yeah, it was interesting because like I said I was on the Dusty Wheel on the big stream, and then I was saying that I've been trying to get my wife to read the Wheel of Time since pretty much like maybe the first or second date that I went on with her, so like for 12 years or whatever, and she's never had any interest in reading it. And like she's watched Harry Potter, and she's watched Lord of the Rings, and she watched Game of Thrones and The Witcher, but she won't read any of the stuff. And then I showed the trailer.
My wife's exact same way. She enjoys the shows, but it's not a big fan of fantasy novels.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like seen some stuff, like she watched a little bit of like Shannara and some other stuff, and she's like, no, not for me. And I showed her the trailer for this, and she was like, yeah, I'm going to watch that. And I was like, cool. At least then you can read the books afterwards and see how different it is. And what do you think about the release schedule? Are you happy with the 3 episodes?
I'm happy and not happy at the same time. Does that make any sense? I wanted a full weekly. So I would have really liked only one episode drop and then keep going. But that would have put them right into through the Christmas season, right into mid-January, which maybe they didn't want to do with other releases coming out. But I think it's the best of both worlds. Some people like to binge things, and other people like weekly releases. I personally think a weekly release generates more buzz. That's like, it comes out, people talk about it, and then word of mouth spreads, and then you have a whole week for other people to pick it up and watch. And the second episode comes out and spreads buzz that way too. People will talk about it like at work or school or wherever they're at. But all at once, like you binge the season and you're like, okay, I'm done for 2 years. Like,
yeah. Like The Witcher. Yeah, Witcher's like,
well, that's what I did with The Witcher. I sat with Witcher come out. I think I sat down. My wife worked a 12-hour shift, and I watched the entire first season pretty much. She went to work, and I just sat down and watched The Witcher. And she get home, she's like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "I just watched 12 hours of TV." You know what I mean? Like,
it was 3 different timelines.
Yeah, it was difficult. Yeah, but I mean, I think weekly would have been perfect, but there's a lot of people who really like to binge, a lot of people who really like it coming out. So I think giving 3 episodes at first as a hybrid sort of thing, they're probably trying to appease both sets of people. Personally, I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's good as well. Like, you can just kind of watch it as almost the first 3 episodes as like a little not even a little movie, as a big movie.
Yeah, it's like watching Endgame.
Exactly, exactly. And it's like, if maybe one of those first 3 episodes isn't quite as strong as later episodes, I think it kind of works to kind of just put them all in together, because it's kind of like, say this, you know what I mean, like, say it doesn't grab you quite as much, but it gets stronger as the season goes on. That might work out quite well for it, just to be like, well, we're into the 3rd season now. You're already invested. You're into episode 4 next week and whatever. I'm really excited with the finale on Christmas Eve as well.
That's difficult. That's difficult for a lot of people. I was talking to Matt about it from the Dusty Wheel, and he does a lot of stuff for Christmas. Like, he's a lot of family traditions for Christmas, and I do too. And we were both like, how do we tell our wives? How do we break the news?
We always watch something on Christmas Eve, like when especially since like since we've had our son, like when he goes to bed, we watch something, right? Or maybe a couple of things. So it's ideal for us, because we already do that anyway. So it's like, well, we're going to watch the season finale of Wheel of Time. It's like, that's like a dream come true for me. I actually can't.
Merry Christmas, yeah.
Like, when I saw the release schedule, I was like, wait, December 24th. I was like, really? This is happening. This is amazing. Like a little early Christmas gift. So no, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm like you. I like the trailer as well. I thought it was interesting how there's not one mention of the Dragon Reborn in the whole trailer.
Not one. And I think that'll be very kept under the hat. I think there's going to be a lot of, they're looking for someone. I think they don't know who it is. Someone could, I mean, there's going to be a lot of dancing around it, and they may not even mention it until Logain gets gentled, and then then they're going to say, wow, this is the person we're looking for, and why they're chasing you, type thing. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So before we wrap up, we can talk about the biggest, probably the biggest scoop you've had. I mean, you've had quite a lot on the channel, but this may well be the biggest one. Is that you unveiled that Luciferin is in season 1, and not only is in season 1, you've got the actor, and it's pity that Chris has had to go, seeing as he's Swedish and he knows who. I said
he knows who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I sent him your video, and I was like, this guy's, and he's like, oh yeah, he's a really good actor.
It was interesting. I've known for months, and I kind of kept it under my hat, and there was I can tell you that Amazon wasn't upset with me for what I did. I can tell you that much. That's all I can tell you. I found out on my own through my sources, and then I sort of floated the idea to them, and nothing ever came of it, of course, but they are not upset that I did reveal it. So there were some people that were very mad at me for revealing this, saying I'm ruining Rafe's hard work and I'm ruining the production team's hard work and everyone else. But I will tell those people that are listening to this that they were not upset with me in any way, shape, or form at all. Nor was I asked not to release it.
Okay, I mean, I suppose, like, you know, one of those things, it's because obviously they're changing the marketing now for the wider audience, and the wider audience won't know who this person is anyway, the character.
Nor would they care. Nor would they really care. This was like, it's a small character, small role, but big for the fans. Very, very big for the fans. Like for someone like you or me, we know instantly who this is. We know that they're important, what they mean, and how cool it is. But for someone who hasn't read the books, well, who's that? Oh, he's in a small part of season 1. We don't really see him again. I don't care. You know, but I was very excited when I found out, and I had confirmed it from 3 different people before I did anything with it at all. And very, very excited. I watched his show reels. I watched some of the things that he was in. Alexander Karim, I think is how you pronounce it. Again, I pronounce everything terribly, so I probably screwed that up too. But he's an exceptional actor, and he does haunted and scared and sort of unstable really well, which that's perfect for Lews Therin.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's but you were right there where you said as well, like it's definitely one for the fans, because also it kind of gives that possibility as a speculation angle of like, oh, how is he going to figure into it? Like, you know, obviously, so I've seen some people straight away go, oh, they're going to do the prologue, but I don't think they are going to do the prologue. They're going to stay very far away from that.
I have zero information on the scenes he's in, who was in the scenes with him, or what was happening on the set at the time, because they were being very secretive about that at that point. You know what I mean? Like there's certain aspects where they did things in studio and things like that where we don't know much about. So I don't know much about that. But if I had to guess, I would, and like I said in my video, I would guess it's going to be sort of a way to explain things. And I don't think you're getting the Winter Dragon all over again. I don't think they would do that. Maybe a version of it, or a small version of it, or a flashback. I think those are things we'll do. I do know that he does speak the old tongue on screen, which is very cool to me. I think that's neat, but I'm not quite sure. But I hope they don't do Winter Dragon again, really. Or if they do, Billy Zane better show up.
Billy Zane, yeah, definitely. But he has to be in it at some point, Billy Zane. Like, he would have been the perfect Basil Gill, I think, unless the actual Basil Gill is perfect. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see the strike on Shao Ghul, like even a little bit. That would be great to see. But that also brings up problems for the Age of Legends company, doesn't it? For when
that's right. So Red Eagle Entertainment had in-house Age of Legends Productions, and they're doing a trilogy of movies based on the Age of Legends. And Zach Bryant, I believe is his name, is the writer. Correct me from that. I'll have to Google that. Maybe Zach is his first name for sure. He's the writer. He wrote X-Men First Class, Thor. So he's a fairly established screenwriter. He's writing the movies, and they will not have anything to do with the show, as far as I know, because Amazon and Sony may not pick it up. It might be another studio, because no studio didn't have to pick it up yet.
Yeah.
And so if it's, say, I don't know, pick another studio that is owned by Disney. I'm not sure. Let's say Disney picks it up. I don't know. Then they could do whatever they wanted, pretty much. Doesn't have to tie in. But it's smart too, because they have the mythos already done. They have a lot of things explained in the show, and they can just kind of borrow from that without really borrowing from it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what is anything on the horizon for you, or is it just kind of getting your schedule ready for the start of the show? Because we're only 2 months away now.
We are only 2 months away. I have something potentially, and I'll say this, something potentially coming in October that is very big and very exciting. It's a huge surprise, but I don't know if it's going to happen yet, so I can't say too much about it. So until then, it's just regular news, and I have a few speculation videos coming out and getting ready for the show to drop in November. But I'm hoping by mid-October I will have something very, very big for the channel, which is a surprise. And that's all I can say. I can't say much else other than that, but I'm hoping. I don't know quite. I won't know for another week or two if it's going to happen, but I'm hoping.
Very exciting. So if you've not already subscribed to John's channel, WotUp, do so. He's doing a 10,000 subscriber contest as well at the moment.
Yes, I am. Yep.
Definitely.
So we have set of minis, Emmons Fielders minis that are 3D printed that we're going to give out to someone who's a subscriber that likes and comments on the videos. And it'll run for about 2 weeks or so after I hit 10,000, and I should hit 10,000 today. So you have the next 2 weeks to like and subscribe and comment my videos to get entered.
There you go. Details will be below. John, thanks so much for coming on again, and we'll have you back on again at some point, no doubt soon. Yeah, next time you're on, maybe we'll have season 1 second trailer out by that point, I'd imagine.
Oh, for sure. Sometime in October we're getting it. So
yeah. And then there'll be the show. So everyone at home, thanks for watching, and for Chris Hultman, who had to put out some fires in the homestead. Until the next turn of the wheel. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.